You got to watch out for the cattle grate.
Yeah,
in
that's
the road.
true. Well, I always just hop over those.
I don't have the same skill level as you do.
Ooh, could you repeat that again?
No, I cannot. Hi, Jordan.
Hey, Brendan.
What's today's ride?
Today's ride is going to be Norikura.
It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in Japan.
And it's not just beautiful, it's also like a fun ride. It's one of my favorites of all time.
So there's the big caldera at the top.
Yeah, and there also at the top there's some there's a shrine. There's some little shops up there. Most importantly, there's the totally unobstructed views because you're way up above the tree line.
And you can see both all over the valleys of Nagano and Gifu.
Yeah, and if you're lucky, then you can see, especially in the early morning when those clouds are still low in the valley, you get this kind of sea of clouds punctuated by the hilltops of green. I mean, it's unparalleled in terms of view.
And you get a nice sunset on the same token.
Yeah, and I have been up there before all of the tourists arrive. If you get up and at it early, and
only because you're a significantly faster rider than I am.
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. But you get up there, and it is because you're above the tree line. It's a sense of peace that like you can't find anywhere else. So when you talk about a weekend escape from Tokyo, it's really hard to beat it.
Yeah, I mean, you and I set out at about 4:30 in the morning, and I think you got to the top at about 6:15 or so, and I was about 15 minutes behind you.
Yeah. The crazy thing is that the place is open. It's not open year round, for one, because of where it's situated at that southern kind of tip of the Northern Alps. That area is known for not a small amount of snowfall.
Fairly massive, and the mountain peaks in the area are mostly over 3,000 meters as well.
So what happens is, weather comes off the Sea of Japan, it slams up against those Alps, and it just dumps tons of snow in there. So in the early spring, it's totally impassable.
When we were there last time, they actually had the Gifu side closed due to the extreme winds.
That's also true. Was that a typhoon?
I don't believe it was. It was just
high winds.
Just high winds.
But anyway, when it opens in, I guess, early July, is that the case? Yeah. Opens in early July, the roads are clear, and you can get up there, and...
you just see the beautiful scenery from basically from that hut that's about 2/3 of the way up. You can see just the folds of mountains into the distance.
Yeah, I agree. So, if I want to climb Norikura, do I need any kind of special permission or anything? Do I have to pay a fee to get my bike up there?
No, it's free to go up, but it is closed to regular car traffic. Only bicycles, buses, taxis, and electric cars are allowed on the road.
Oh, that's a good deal. That keeps you from getting a lot of traffic that you might not otherwise want on a bike, especially on some of these narrow mountain roads.
Yeah, and it's especially nice with the good scenery because you can stop and look at it wherever you want.
One thing I wanted to ask on your last comment. So buses are okay.
Yeah.
Taxis are okay.
Yeah.
EVs?
So the history there is that Norikura used to be open to the public, and then back in about 2003, they closed it to regular traffic on concerns of pollution and damage to the local environment. And so it used to be a toll road, and they made it free to use and closed it, except to the buses and taxis at the time.
Okay.
Remember, taxis also ran on natural gas, so they're cleaner as well.
Okay.
And then with EVs, back in 2012, they opened it up to them as well because there's no pollution concern from them
Okay.
either.
All right. So just being kind of selfish as a cyclist, the reason I like this, we all care about the environment and global warming and what have you, but selfishly, the reason I like this policy is because it keeps the traffic off the road, as
Absolutely.
a cyclist. Now, there are only a few, rich guys driving around Teslas these days. I guess the Nissan Note is a little more accessible, but what happens, 15 years from now when everyone's driving EVs? Is this place going to become a traffic jam?
I suspect it won't be, but the only way will be to wait and see.
Okay. What's your call? When that happens, are they going to close this loophole for the EVs?
I bet they will.
Okay, I'll be lobbying for that one. Okay. So yeah, there are buses and taxis. Now, I've done it a few times. There's a trick to the buses because it is kind of it's a mountain road.
Yeah.
It's narrow in sections.
Yep.
These buses ain't small.
Nope.
They are the opposite of small. The other thing though that I remember is they tend to drive in groups.
Up to 5.
Yeah, like these. It's like the modern day version of an Oregon Trail, like wagon train or something like that. You got 5 of these gigantic lumbering buses going up.
They run once an hour and they take 50 minutes to get up. So if you chase one right as it leaves at the bottom, an experienced cyclist like ourselves, who can get up this hill in less than an hour and 50 minutes, who can get up without being passed by a bus.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Other people, like our producer, might not be able to get up there quite so quickly and will probably wind up being passed by a bus.
Well, I know that his solution will be to just cheat and get an electric assist bike, and then he'll probably pass us.
Probably.
So, okay. I leave right after the bus, and then the only other thing I got to worry about, because I'm so experienced, is just dodging a few taxis. That's right?
Yeah, and also the odd tour buses do wind up on it a little bit as well. So you might be passed by a Hato bus or something like that as well.
But either way, as far as like nice, beautiful mountain climbing roads go, because of that policy, in terms of vehicle traffic, it's about as low as you're going to get.
Yeah,
that's part of the appeal.
I mean, even bar none, I think this is one of the most beautiful roads in Japan.
Yeah, that's true. Like going up from, I guess it starts at a visitor center, or at least that's where the most popular Strava segment starts.
Yeah,
there's a visitor center, and then if I recall, that first few hundred meters, maybe it's about 300 meters of climbing. It's mostly forest road, which has its own appeal. But you don't get the huge vista, expansive views.
But it's also only a 3 or 4% grade, so you can fly along it pretty quickly.
And then you go, and then cars are allowed on that section. Yeah?
That's right.
Okay. And then you go up a little further, and then you run into there's a gate. It stops the cars.
Yeah, Sambongi Gate.
Yeah, that's it. And from Sambongi Gate, actually, there's an interesting little kind of side trip there if you're touring.
Yeah.
There's a hiking trail that goes back to some really beautiful waterfalls there. Yeah,
it's actually listed as one of the top 100 waterfalls of the country.
Yeah, so just pro tip: if you're on touring Japan or something like that, you'll probably be a little tired by the time you get to that point. It's a great spot to park the bike for a few minutes, grab a bite to eat. And what is it, 20-minute hike to the falls and back?
Probably not advisable in cleats.
Yes, you will want to change out of your cleats. Otherwise, you will most likely need to be hauled out on a stretcher.
Well, there are some rocky portions where it would be difficult to get over.
Yeah,
but
you wouldn't want to injure your delicate feet.
But just some regular mountain cleat shoes would be fine.
Mm-hmm. And that's again about 300-400 meters from the gate. Yeah. Now, if you can take it in two different approaches. One is starting from that Strava segment at the visitor center.
Yep.
The other, if you're really daring, you can start all the way from the base of the climbing in Matsumoto. Yeah.
You can,
right?
But it's generally not advised due to the level of traffic on the national road. That leads over towards Takayama, frequently referred to as the 13 tunnels of hell.
Yeah, I was going to say, the traffic is one thing, the tunnels are another. They are terrifying.
They are sufficiently small that it's difficult for coach buses to pass each other within them, and that leads to extreme traffic jams, especially during the fall.
Yeah, if you want to talk about driving skill, you've got your F1 racers. I will put those coach bus drivers that go through the tunnels on par with those guys. It is amazing how they get those things in there.
In our tours, you saw me drive the high ace, and I got to keep the left mirror within a few inches of the left-hand side of the wall.
Yeah, I mean, a high ace, that's not bad, but we're talking about giant coach buses. Yep. So don't give yourself credit where there is no credit due.
Duly noted.
No, but anyway, if you do take it from Matsumoto and you go all the way to the top, and the peak again is 2715 meters.
The peak is 2715, and then you descend a little bit into this area behind at 2702.
Yeah. And Matsumoto sits at around, I don't know what, 400 or 500 meters, something like that.
Yeah, something
anyway,
like that.
you're over 2,000 meters of climbing.
Yep.
Yeah. But starting from the tourist center, you're at, I think the Strava segment calls it just south of 1,300 meters. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Strava has it listed at 1,292.
Yeah. And if you want to be lazy and you take your car to Sanmongaki, you got about
Which we did do one year when we had those two inexperienced cyclists.
That's true. We've made it beginner friendly, or as beginner friendly as such a thing can be. Then you're at about 1,000 meters climbing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. The descent from the top, you start at the there's a gate that divides the two sides. Nagano.
Yeah, that's the prefectural barrier.
So you start going down, and then what's fascinating to me is that it is July, but because you're so high and because it does get a lot of snow, yes, the roads are clear, but you can see alpine skiers.
Yep.
In whatever July.
Yep.
Yeah. So you start at the base, and again, because it's July, it's kind of warm down there. So maybe you're wearing your shorts or a jersey or something like that, and then by the time you get to the top, it's a little chilly.
Have you ever seen any of those cyclists going up with skis on their back?
Yeah, like what do they do? What's the kind of pattern for those guys? So they carry their skis up, they take the bike, they get off at that ski zone, and then they just go ski for a couple hours and then ride back down?
Yeah, they walk up and then ski down and then walk up. Because there's no chairlifts. It's not a sanctioned ski hill per se. It's just a place where there's snow in August.
So is this going to be like a new age biathlon type thing, like cycling and ski?
I doubt
Are we witnessing the birth of a new sport?
Like ski and shoot a gun?
I
don't think so.
That was okay. So yeah, you get past the ski area, and then again that first, gosh, I would say, what is it? Somewhere between 5-10 minutes or so. Yeah, you're above the tree line.
Yeah, basically until Kuraigahara Hut, which is at about 2350 meters above sea level. And from once you pass that, you're kind of getting a bit more into the trees.
Yeah. So in my mind, I divide this segment into kind of three sections. So that hut up and above is that top third.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how I think of it. And then what is there to do at that hut? Anything? Can you stay there?
I have stayed there during mountain climbing season. I have stayed there. It's a nice little place to stay.
Do you is it like throw a futon or a sleeping bag on the floor, or do they actually have beds?
I had a private room, and it was a futon tatami room.
Oh, okay.
Stayed there.
So you splashed out for cash. They have private rooms and non-private rooms.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Uncle Pennybags here. And so they have rooms, both private, shared, and then food, and the usual.
It's a standard full-service Japanese ryokan style location.
Onsen? Are there hot springs in there that you can hop in?
I would be extremely surprised if it didn't have a bath, but I don't recall if it was in a proper hot spring or not.
Okay. Hopefully they're hot springs.
And during the
daytime,
they sell drinks and whatnot. And they have benches, so it's definitely a place where for people to stop and get a refresher on the way up. Because it's a nice break for about the last third, and you kind of feel like you're finally getting there. And then since you're above the tree line, you can actually see the peak. From there, you can actually see where you're headed.
That's actually why I do not stop on the way up, because it just makes me depressed. But I have stopped on the way down.
And also, you wouldn't want to ruin your
chances I gotta crush the Strava com,
which is under an hour.
Yeah,
And what's your best time again?
More than that.
I think you're like an hour 18 or something.
We're covering up the mic now. Okay. After the hut, now I'm in kind of the middle third of the ride, and then you start seeing like some trees appear here and there, so you don't get the unobstructed views, but the contours of the road give you you still get good views around the bends.
But it would be hard pressed to call it great views all the way from there. Especially around some of the hairpins, you get some lookouts. But yeah, it's nothing compared to the top third.
Okay, time for a shameless plug. Check out Sporra.cc to find this and many other exciting and beautiful routes the world over. Sporra is the global cycling adventure game where you can complete challenges and battle your friends to explore your world while getting fit and climbing that leaderboard. So feel free. Nay, correction, I encourage you to cyberstalk us at Sporra.cc. Sporra, what motivates you? There are some cool little waterfalls and things like that. The road is, it straddles them in some areas.
Yeah.
So
they're right next to the road. You can literally just put your bike right next to them.
And get some good shots of people coming down, or also if you're of the GoPro variety, which I believe you have a GoPro.
I do have.
There's some things to be seen.
There are. It's definitely, I mean, there's definitely a lot of scenery to see on the way down.
Okay.
And it's a very technical descent as well. There's a lot of curves. It's about 1.5 lanes wide in most places, so you do have to be careful about those oncoming buses, as we'll talk about later.
Right. Yeah. The buses themselves are big. There's a trick to doing it when you descend, which is keep an eye out on when those buses are going to leave at the top.
And just get in front of them.
Get right in front.
Because they'll take about 40-45 minutes to get down, and you can get down on a bike in about 30, so there's no chance of them passing you.
Yeah. The one thing that you do have to get good at using, I think, to make the most out of that road, on the descent anyway, are the little mirrors that they have at all the switchbacks.
Because remember, there are oncoming buses. You will definitely get a set of oncoming buses.
Yeah, at least one, and usually two in my experience.
Because they go every hour, and they take 50 minutes. So if you're going down, the chances are you'll hit 2 groups of buses. And if you're lucky, you'll get it at, like, around the hut where the road's a bit wider.
Right.
But at least you can hear the buses coming because they're working hard getting up the hill.
True. And yeah, again, just more visually obvious because they're so large, but the ones that sneak up on you are the taxis, because they do leave at obviously irregular intervals. They're smaller, they're quieter, so you want to keep an eye on the mirrors to make sure that you don't end up like a really kind of nasty hood ornament.
Especially with as tempting as it is to go around the inside of some of those hairpins.
Yes, I have been tempted at times. I have also had some pucker moments. We'll just leave it at that. But other than that, because the traffic is pretty low, it's outside of a race where they've got a closed road. It's as good of a descent as you're going to get, I think.
Yeah, especially when we do it in the morning, we see pretty much no one. I think when we do it in the morning, we don't actually get passed by anybody.
Yeah, that's also true. The hot springs, there used to be some hot springs there, I believe. I'm not sure. We'll have to go double check this.
One of the bus stops references what used to be a hot spring.
Okay, so do you know if
no
people could go in the past?
I have no information on the hot springs in the middle, but down near the visitor center, most of those hotels have hot springs built in.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is that regardless of whether you can hop in the springs, it definitely smells like springs. So not so bad on the descent when you're huffing and puffing on the way up.
It smells like farts on the way up, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
basically. It's like having your nose shoved into a fart can. But outside
Fantastic.
of that, lovely.
And that's something you've experienced on a regular basis?
Hey, no judging here. So you
What about the bottom third?
Yeah, I was going to say, so that you mentioned the Sambongaki.
Yeah.
Again, in my mind, that's now the borderline to entering the bottom third of the segment.
Yeah.
And actually, that little gate area is pretty interesting in itself. One bit of warning, though, is before that, if you're on the descent, slightly after if you're on the climb, there's a ski lift, and right around that area recently there's been a lot of construction. I think they're just regrading the road, but
well, the road surface is not the best, especially on the lower third or so. There's definitely some room for improvement. Well, in general, the Nagano side of the climb, the road surface is not the best, which we definitely experience when we descend down. There's definitely a lot of bumps going down.
Yeah, true. And I've even picked up some flats there.
I did remember the first time we did it. We got back to the truck.
Yeah, and then that was flat.
And then we discovered that my tire was flat 5 minutes later.
And I had a similar experience coming down, and I started feeling a little bit of harshness. Stopped at the Samongaki Gate, and then sure enough, yeah, I'd picked up something pretty nasty. Fortunately, was able to repair it and get the rest of the way down. But it's not a bad place to stop, honestly speaking. There's some interesting falls not too far away.
And some ice cream.
Yeah. So if you want to remember, what's the rule of thumb? One soft cream is 1 minute.
Per half hour. Per half hour of riding, you've used enough calories to eat one ice cream. The Gifu side is a wider, newer feeling road, and also used to be a big toll road. So it's much smoother.
But yeah, otherwise it's a great place to just park the bike.
Yep.
You can grab a bite to eat.
Yep.
And then do the hike to the falls and see that.
Yep.
Some
It's
good
definitely
photo ops.
definitely an extra little side sight to see. So there's also an east-west running super forest road that we once drove a little bit to get to the Shirohane Onsen next door.
That's right. Yeah, I have personally not ridden it on the bike, but it's a beautiful road.
Yeah.
And when we were driving, I remember seeing like troops of monkeys all in the forest.
And it's a great alternative if you're coming in from Matsumoto, because you can go up one valley over and then cross on the super forest road. So if you're going to ride all the way up from sea level, that is that would be the recommended way to take the super forest road over.
Right. And then as a just general interesting thing to go see and do, Shirahone itself is a very famous onsen area.
Yeah, very famous for the white waters.
Yeah, it's got there's so many minerals contained in the water. It almost has this milky appearance to it. So they've got several onsen in that area.
Yep.
Some are available for like just daily public use. Others you got to stay the night.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a worthwhile side trip at a minimum. Yeah. So that's all at that Samongaki Gate.
Yeah.
And then the bottom third of the segment after Samongaki Gate, now there's going to be a little more vehicle traffic because cars, private cars can go up to that.
But it is a
section of
nice
the road.
2-lane road going both ways, so as long as you don't get out of your lane.
That's true. It's wider, 2 lanes, properly divided, and the pavement surface is just better in that
it's better.
section, too.
But the buses do tend to completely cut off both lanes as they go around some of the corners, so you still have to be careful.
Yeah, well, that goes without saying. But the descent from there also levels out a bit more, I think. It's probably a 4 to 5, it doesn't extend past the 5% grade, whereas there are some areas further up in the segment where it definitely kicks up more.
But it never gets over 10.
True.
On the whole climb, I'd say the steepest it ever gets is 7 or 8%.
Yeah, and those are relatively short little bits.
Yeah.
It is, if you look at the route profile on Strava or
It's
whatever,
just a triangle.
it is a triangle. Yeah, it is flat both sides. Yeah. But other than that, the rest of the descent down, you can call it nice and smooth. You don't get the expansive views after that point. You are very much in
But it is a
below
nice
the forest
roll.
tree line.
I think it is a very nice roll through the forest, especially when you go up. It's not that steep, so you can actually keep up a good cadence, and it's a good run through the forest when you're going up.
Well, in terms of speed on my descent, that's where I actually get my fastest top speeds.
There is that
segment.
one really straight segment not far from the bottom, but you got to watch out for the cattle grate.
Yeah,
in
that's
the road.
true. Well, I always just hop over those.
I don't have the same skill level as you do.
Ooh, could you repeat that again?
No, I cannot.
That was worth a try. But so if I want to get out there, what's your recommendation? Do I need to go by car? Can I take public transport? What's the best suggestion?
Well, we've driven out a few times. When I've gone on my own, what I've done is taken the train out and rented a car.
Okay. Rented a car from Matsumoto.
From Matsumoto. And the reason for that is, even on your own, there's not much difference in the round-trip bus and train from Matsumoto compared to a half-day car rental. And then you get all the flexibility of being able to come and go whenever you want.
But so you did that as a day trip?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, so you can do it as a day trip. You take the limited express train out.
Yep.
It stops in Matsumoto.
Yep.
and then you pick up your rental car in the morning
Yeah.
to get up to the
Yeah.
visitor center.
I
Start the climb.
personally got off one stop earlier at Shiojili just because it saves 5 or 10 minutes of train time and it's the same distance. But Matsumoto works as well.
Okay.
And then
Yeah, that's a good tip.
the train is about 800 yen, and then the bus I think is 1,400. So round trip, you're looking at 4,000 or 5,000 yen just on buses and trains from Matsumoto.
Which you can cut out with just a car rental.
And a half-day car rental is whatever, 5,000-6,000 yen plus a couple hundred yen in gas.
And then the other nice benefit to that is that you skip all the nasty traffic in Tokyo.
Yep.
So you skip all that traffic, and then it's just smooth sailing from the highway.
And the number of buses that go up and down it's not many, but it's also not few. But if you're unlucky, you might find yourself with an hour or two wait to come back down if you just missed one. And so the car gives you that flexibility as well.
Okay. So the upshot is you can get all the way to the visitor center on public transport via the bus.
Yep.
It just you might take a little longer.
It probably compares about average with car from Tokyo, because you'll probably take a break because it is about 4 or 5 hours from Tokyo when you've taken your breaks. And the bus will take bicycles as well. If you're more than a few people, you should probably call ahead, but we've been pretty good with that.
Yeah. And then so one thing to bear in mind if you are going to do the ride, it's only open from July through early November.
Yeah.
But even so, it's always going to be cold at the top. So
it's always liable to be cold. On a nice summer day, it's maybe 15 degrees or so at the top. But if it's cloudy and windy, even in the middle of summer, like when we went with the extreme winds, it was cold.
Yeah,
even
it was
in the middle of the day.
It was numb your hands cold.
In July.
And also, because of the altitude, the weather changes very quickly and very dramatically. So
always recommended that you have a windbreaker with you.
Yeah, windbreaker and maybe even some long-fingered gloves, and make sure you keep an eye on the local forecast because, you can definitely get caught out up there. But other than that,
it's a pretty safe bet. Worst case is you can probably get your bike back down on the bus, and it's a hill, so you can always just turn around and head back down. In fact, when we went last year, we were rained out on the second day.
That's
and
true.
we wound up turning it into an onsen trip.
That's true, and that's the nice thing about having things like Shirahone close by, or even the place that you can stay at the base of the climb. There are several onsens down there as well.
Nothing was more frustrating as an organizer of a bike trip than everybody telling me how wonderful the onsen was and completely forgetting that they'd brought all their bicycles with them.
Look, they've made the best out of a compromised situation, we'll call it that.
I would have loved it if they'd said, "Oh, it's too bad we couldn't climb the hill," rather than, "That onsen was great." Maybe next year we should just not bring the bikes at all and just go to onsen.
Okay, well, we'll call it the hot springs tour next time. So I guess that about wraps up everything else.
I think that pretty much covers Norikura.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sporra podcast. Check out this and other interesting routes at sporra.cc. Don't forget to subscribe, like, write a review, and tell us about your favorite routes on the Sporra subreddit. Maybe we'll do an episode on it. Sporra, what motivates you?